Welcome back to Girls Across the Pond, episode 7.
Episode 7. How are you guys doing? We are recording this on Easter Sunday. You'll probably get it a lot later than that. Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy belated Easter.
Happy Easter. Today we have a fun bunch of things to chat about. We're going to talk about some historical things and traditions and things that we may be clinging on to that we don't need to, because now they're not history as much as just outdated. And then we're going to play a really fun game, and I'm going to get stumped by my daughter, I'm quite sure. We are going to play Two Truths and a Lie. I'm scared. I'm very scared.
You have nothing to be afraid of.
So join us.
How are you doing this week?
I am good. It's so funny. The weather has been so nice here, but today it's actually cool and breezy, and it's like only 75 or something, which is very chilly compared to what we've been up in like the 90s. So it almost feels like I need a sweater. But it's Easter Sunday. It's very quiet. Everybody's hanging out home. This is our first, I think, Easter as a family where we're all sort of apart.
I don't think last year Simon wasn't home for Easter.
He came home on March 22nd.
Oh, right, because COVID happened. You're right, you're right.
I think we were all together.
Yeah.
At the little interim apartment we stayed at. So, Did you get your basket?
I did get my basket. Thank you very much.
Nice. Easter baskets are all fun. We've been chowing on chocolate today because we gave up chocolate for Lent. And, oh, so nice to have chocolate again. All good. What was I going to say? Oh my gosh. Before we get started, I had the funniest conversation this week with a woman at a bank. I opened an account for a product, thing I was doing. And it was one where you had to sign up for the account and then call in to get, or have them email you your account number so you could actually get into the account that you set up. So you kind of...
Right.
And I set it up, and I never got the email with the account. So I called them and I asked this lady who picked up the phone, poor thing, answered the phone. And I told her I didn't have my account number. I couldn't get into my account. And she must have been an Aquarius. Apparently they just changed their accounting system, and they had some new account numbers, and she proceeded to tell me how the old numbers worked and how the new numbers worked. And then she decided, let me see if we have a new account number for you. And so she looked it up, and sure enough, it was a 6-digit number. Great, that's all I needed to know. And then she proceeded to tell me about the old numbers that actually started with an L, but then they had this interim period where they had an L with an N, and there were 7 digits long, but there was a space in the middle. Now there's no space, so they had to redo their website because now they just need a box that has 6 digits, and it was going on. I thought I was going to lose my mind. This woman, she was so helpful and so kind, and I was trying to be so nice to her, but she just was going on and on with every aspect of the phone call. And I so wanted to ask her what her birthday was. Because that was an example of somebody who should be telling you the time that they want to build a watch for you. She was telling me how the whole computer system used to work.
I have a really bad habit of doing that so frequently, and not only doing that, but like I'll start to tell somebody something, and then everybody's told the same story twice at least one time before, where you like tell somebody something and they're like, I've already told you this. And like there have been times where I've gone through that, and then somebody's like, oh yeah, you told me about that, and then I'm like, yeah, and then I just continue to tell the story as though they never just told me that. And it's
Do you often see people looking at you like this?
No. Thank God. Thank God I have friends that are very patient with me.
Yes. So just let them talk. It's all good. Yeah, she was very sweet. And they've changed their computer system, and I have a new number, and that's the end of the story. But
and now your bank account works.
my bank account works, and I'm learning patience, which, if you know me, is a very hard thing. I used to think I was a pretty patient person, but I'm not. But I'm not. Yeah. So anyways, we've been looking for a new church because we've just moved, and today being Easter Sunday, we thought, oh God, we have not been to church in a while because we've just moved and we don't know what we're doing. So we searched around and we found a church here in Florida that was open. There's only a few churches that actually had services today, which I was surprised about because most places in Florida are open. And this particular one was like, yeah, come in, no masks, whatever, let's shake hands, let's give a hug. I mean, they were open as far as they could go. But it was great. It was just a non-denominational Christian church, but they were really good. I really quite enjoyed the service. It was very uplifting. They had a young girl there. Actually, they had a band, as most churches do these days, which is odd for us, you and I, because we're used to not having that. But they had a great little band, and the young girl, she's probably in her early 20s, older than you, but still young, and she had the most beautiful voice. I mean, she sang Amazing Grace today, and it just gave me chills. It was beautiful.
Did you cry?
I did get weepy.
I knew it.
If you were there, you'd have been like, are you crying?
Yeah, I would have been like that.
Yeah. But it was beautiful, and I was so happy to be there, and it was wonderful. Anyways, we walked out of the church, and I said to Dad, God, that was great. What did you think? And he was like, yeah, I didn't like it. And I thought, oh, that's so sad. So we probably won't go back. But he was missing the tradition of our typical church, and we, if you don't know us, which you probably don't, we always attended a high ceremony church, as they call themselves, where the priest or pastor who's leading the church is full regalia. There's everybody on the.
We didn't have like a proper band at that church. We had an organist.
We had an organist. We sang hymns. I much prefer personally hymns to contemporary Christian music. I'll listen to contemporary Christian music if you're playing it for me, but it's not something I seek out. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I enjoy it. I enjoy both. I think my problem is that as a music production student, when I listen to music very frequently, I end up too often in the analytical side of music. So when I'm listening to like church music, because like the church I go to currently is also contemporary modern Christian music church. When I go, I'm around all these people that are like, they've got their hands in their air and they're like singing along, and I just don't feel that emotional connection because I'm not that emotional in general. But two, like today, for example, we were listening, we did their Easter Sunday service too, and the guitar started playing, and my friend, the service was live streamed, so I actually just went over to my friend's flat and we just watched the live stream together. And like my friend was like, oh, I love this song. Like that was like his first response, and my first response was, wow, the guitar EQ is kind of weird. Like that's literally what I was like. I was like, wow, it sounds like only treble on that guitar EQ, and I was like, they need to boost that in like the 80 hertz range. And I was like, that's where my mind went, not, oh yeah, I love this song, hands up, let's rejoice. Like so I find it hard to enjoy just because I look at it a little more on the analytical side, but I'm totally fine with like worshiping either way. I don't mind. I get more out of like sermons and prayer in church services than I do with the actual worship in the song or hymn standpoint, but I don't mind either. And will still participate in either.
Yeah, I think it's you and I are very similar, and I think for me it's just, I think spirituality is a very personal thing, and on different levels for every person. And for me, I want to come in and I want to
it's inward focused, isn't it?
It's an inward. I don't want to be out there doing it, but there were definitely the hands in the air today and that kind of thing. There was also applause, which I thought was odd.
Oh yeah, there's applause in my church as well.
Yeah, that's odd to me. I'm not used to applause in a church. We would after a birthday prayer, but
right. I feel like in like you can always tell if you're inward worshiper or if you're an outwards worshiper, when like people say let's pray, people's hands either do this and they go out to like let's pray and like you put your hands open, or it's let's pray and your hands come in and you like bow your head. And I'm the latter. My hands go down and my head goes down. That's just like naturally what my body does.
Yeah.
But I know tons of people that like put their hands out, and actually, so my church that I'm going to now has, just like for a little bit of a spiel, has gone online because of COVID, and they have like a fully live stream service. It's really great. But recently, because things are starting to open up again, they have been allowing in-person congregations, but you have to book your tickets ahead of time so they can account for people and such. So my friend and I went to just a couple of their normal Sunday services in the evening, and just to go to the actual in-person congregation. But we went early enough before this church service started that we were like watching the tech team rehearsal while they were like running all the sound and all this stuff, which I'm planning on joining really soon. But before they did, the whole tech team, like before the actual service, the whole tech team got together and like said a prayer. But I thought the way they did it was like really cool, because they all got in like one big circle, and it was socially distanced because they were all like 6 feet apart. But they all said like one big prayer as a group, and then they took a time where everybody just turned to the person on their right and prayed for that person, and then like took another second, and then everybody turned to their person on their left and then prayed for that person in specific too. And then they prayed once more as a group. And just like watching that from the outsider's perspective, because it was the tech team praying for the tech team, so the congregation wasn't involved, we were just like waiting for the service to start. I thought it was very interesting. I've never seen anybody like in a group pray like that, and I really enjoyed watching it from an outsider's perspective.
When you were in Altar Guild, didn't you guys pray at the back of the church after a service?
Yes, but it was a group prayer. We just got together and we would all bow our heads and pray together. But the part that I'm emphasizing is everybody praying for a specific person, so that everybody is receiving a prayer specific to them.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
gotcha.
It's not just like, oh, Lord, help us get through this service. It's like, I hope so-and-so does blah, blah, blah.
Help us get through this service. Got another one, Lord. One more time.
Sorry, you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Yeah. What I wanted to, why I brought up the whole church thing, we're not getting religious here, but, well, actually we did. But it brought, when we were driving home, it made me think, the church we went to before was very traditional, and I love tradition. I'm very much organized, and this is the way it's always been. Why would you change it? Status quo kind of person. But it made me start to wonder, because I thought about going back to a church similar to what we had attended back in Colorado, which is very strict and orderly, and it just had its processes. And this one was so loose, and I thought, is it tradition or is it old-fashioned? And those can be one and the same, but they can also be very different. I mean, you can have a tradition that is something that you do, i.e. Easter morning, whatever. But you could also have traditions that weigh you down in just being the old way of doing things, and now's the time to look forward. And it made me wonder if more churches are opening up to this more spiritual, everybody has a band now kind of thing. And is that the new way of doing things, or is that just a different way? And when is tradition old-fashioned and needs to be revamped? I don't know. From a young person's point of view, from your point of view and your friends and buddies at school or whatever, how do you guys all look at that?
I have to be honest, it's not a conversation I have with any of my friends. Man, this is so traditional. What's the difference between tradition and old-fashioned? That's never been a point of conversation, but I think it's important to have both. Something that is, because, I mean, for the exact reason you said earlier, you connect with different things. Like, you really connected with the church service you just went to, versus Dad, as you just said, did not connect with it. And having both options available, a more traditional like a quote unquote old fashioned but more traditional church service versus a more contemporary modern one, people are going to connect with different things, especially when it comes to emotional standpoints like that, where it is like a very inwards and like thing that connects to your heart. I feel like it's important to have both things because not everybody thinks the same way, not everybody's minds work the same way, as I've clearly stated before, because my mind does not work. I feel like most cognitive humans do. But I feel like it's important to have both so that everybody has like, I don't want to say like an equal opportunity of connecting, but so that everybody can connect with something if they so choose to. But also it's dependent on the scenario and on what specifically we're talking about when it comes to traditions, because, you know, if you look at something like modern day, I'm not gonna get political, but like if you like look at like gender roles and quote unquote traditional gender roles, nowadays that's very old fashioned. Not just traditional, it's old fashioned. Like,
isn't that
period.
odd?
But
yeah, and I look at it and think, well, yeah, I guess I'm old fashioned. I mean, I'm certainly like, you know, live your life and do what you want. But to me, that seems black and white. And yeah,
what?
I don't want to get into this. I know you started it, Mom. I think I'm a very old-fashioned, traditional person. So
interesting.
When things like that come up, I think the world should be black and white to me. But that doesn't mean that these new things coming down the pipeline at me, I'm like, oh, poo-poo. It's just not for me. You know, I'm living in a world where I think I'm used to the way things have been. Status quo, I'm very comfortable doing my own thing. And yet now here's other things, and again, I'm going to use the church example, where church isn't high priest, and it's not, you know, the altar guild and all that kind of stuff. It's a bunch of kids standing up at the altar with guitars and keyboards and singing contemporary Christian songs. It's very odd to me, which is, I liked it today. Not that it's wrong, it's just not, it's left of center to me, and I'm not used to it.
Personally, I'm somebody who, don't get me wrong, I love rules. I love it when there's a set of guidelines. I'm like, great, I know exactly where things are, what I'm supposed to be doing, where my leeway is in this section. But also, when I'm given like guidelines or quote unquote traditions or whatever, my first thought is like, not like, how can I break them? That's definitely not where my mind goes, but more like, how can I do this in a maybe more efficient way or a better way or a more unique way, I think, is like kind of where my mind goes. Because like, I mean, even if you just take the church example again, when you were like, you know, these are now, you know, young kids just worshiping with like some guitars. I mean, not everybody at a point in time has been able to go to seminary school. So, you know, but what's to stop somebody who maybe, I don't know, has a guitar on their own and they live in their own life, but they're like, you know, I really want to worship. There's nothing, you know, it's not like somebody's like, man, I really want to get religious, but I don't have the money to go and, you know, get a degree in this and like actually do proper training for all this stuff. Therefore, I can't be religious.
Well, contrary to what you're saying there, I think that every single person in that congregation was probably more educated in the Bible and the books than anybody at our previous church.
Right. So that's more of a, yeah, I would argue the same thing about my church now. There are teens my age in my college like youth program who have like giant excerpts of the Bible just memorized off their like verses, and like they like read their Bibles consistently, and I'm like, holy crap, like somebody was like, man, we were just like, you know, doing this prayer, and I really felt called as a group for us to really pay attention to Psalm 91, which is blah 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 blah. And I was like, oh my God, the fact that you have that memorized and know it off the top of your head is like so impressive, and I have so much respect for you. But like, you know, that there's an example of when times where you're changing the normal and doing things in a new, innovative way can improve things. Because if you're not changing things, there is no ability for improvement, period. I mean, you can argue in some situations when things have changed, they've gotten worse, but you'll never know if you don't try.
That's right, 100%. And I'm all for that school of thought. I think that's great. Do you have traditions that now that you are still holding on to now that you're out on your own? Things that we had as a family?
I don't really know, like, if
Have
I
been
would
that long ago.
consider us to have had many traditions as a family. Like, I mean, going to church, like doing Lent, like, and stuff, but that's like more religious stuff that, like, but it's not specific to our family or anything. But I mean, even like, I feel like American culture, because America is like such a big melting pot of like so many different cultures meshed into one, I feel like it doesn't have much of its own culture. Maybe also because it's such a new country compared to the history of like other countries. We are only what 1776, like, so we're a very new country for like the age of the rest of the world. But I feel like there aren't a ton of cultures and traditions that are strictly American. I don't know, maybe the Super Bowl, and if that's one, no, I don't, because I did not watch the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah. What about Sunday night suppers? I mean, I always like to end the weekend with a nice, calm meal before we hit the road on the week again.
I do not. I don't cook. So, I do porridge. Sunday night porridge. And I also like, I don't know. Though, like, I was gonna say, like, I don't sit and eat with my flatmates, but that's not true because, like, sometimes, like, my flatmates and I will make a meal together and we'll, like, all make fajitas because there's, like, enough for all of us. Or we'll all, like, chip in, like, 5 pounds and then order, like, a big meal deal from, like, Taco Bell or something. And, like, then it's only, like, 5 pounds a person and we got a ton of food and then, like, works out really well or something. So, like, we eat together, but it's not like, oh, every Sunday we're gonna sit down and have a meal together. It never... It's not that black and white.
Yeah. Dad and I are going to start having beach Thursdays. So every Thursday morning, we're going to get up, go get some coffee at Starbucks or whatever, go to the beach.
Very nice.
For a few hours. Yeah, barring any weather issues. But yeah, we just said, during the week, we want to go when it's not terribly crowded because the weekends are crazy. And just take Mel out and do that. I think that's nice. I don't know. I think traditions are so important, and history.
I also think they're important as well. I want to clarify, even though I'm arguing on the side of new. I do think they're important.
I follow a hashtag on Instagram. Well, I follow quite a few that kind of pertain to this, but I love heirlooms, and I think the concept of an heirloom is. I mean, do you know what those are?
Yeah, like a physical thing you pass down.
Yeah. There's quite a few different heirlooms, and I love, obviously, famous ones that you can see through the ages. One of my favorites is following tiaras, which is kind of an obscure thing.
I know. I actually knew that about you. I remember you told me that.
I love to follow tiaras through the ages, and you can see the same piece of jewelry on multiple heads. Whether they're most of them
heads.
Most of them are royalty, but some are just aristocracy, but you can see them through the ages, and I love following things like that, or seeing a brooch, a piece of jewelry, a brooch that appears throughout time. I think that's very fun. We don't have any family heirlooms. I'm gonna leave you some of my jewelry. Make it an heirloom for whomever. If you ever procreate and have future people, little people that you may have.
Tiny humans.
What's that?
Tiny humans.
Exactly.
How's your language learning?
My language learning is going so well. I will say, I am struggling with the fact that this, just like Korean for you, is not a romanticized language.
A romanized language.
Romanized language. Thank you. Romanticized. So I'm having to learn an alphabet, learn what those letters are, learn what those letters sound like, and how they're strung together to make a word. And that word doesn't, you don't pronounce every single letter, or sometimes you do. I don't know. There's some other letters that have no pronunciation. They're just there for the inflection. So I'm struggling with all of that, and then trying to learn, what that word is. so it's like a multi-tiered thing, but it's very good. My little Russian team that I just love skated again this weekend. It was great. And they pulled a bronze medal at a very tough competition. Man, they had some stiff competition. And they're so tiny. You forget how tiny this team is because they skate so mature. And there they were on the podium. And it was third place, so the third is a little lower anyway. But the first and second were up here, and then they were like, their little heads peeking over. They're so tiny, so adorable. But I was so excited because I was watching the presentation on YouTube, and it has, up in the corner of a sporting event, it has like a little stat box, and it was all in Russian. And I was able to look at it and figure out what the words were and what the scores actually meant that I was looking at. So I was looking, and all of a sudden I realized that the bottom word said leader, and I was like euphoric. I was just like, oh my gosh, that's the leader's
It feels
score.
good, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was like, oh, I got it. And then I looked at the top one, and I started sounding it out, and I realized that the one just above it was current, was the word that it was saying. So the current skater was this, and this is what the leader was. So I was able to figure all that out, which was great. And then I was, they were all over Instagram this weekend because they posting the different things going on at that event, and so I was able to pull out a few words from each of those. I still can't read a whole post, but I was able to figure out most of them. I've got the word championship down. I can spot that now. I can spot Russia. That word comes up. Dance, I can see that word in the middle of a post. So yeah, it's going well so far.
Very
How
nice.
about you? How about you? We missed yours last week, so you have 2 weeks worth of fill-in to do.
First of all, don't worry about not being able to read a full post. There are some times where because I follow a lot of K-pop idols and stuff on Instagram, and they'll post things in full Korean because they're, Korean. And a lot of times I can't read a lot of what it says because they'll use like really big words. And I'm like, why did you write that word instead of just like, oh yeah, I had fun? They're like, I had an exuberant time today. And I'm like, okay,
Exactly.
Vocabulary. But like, it's the same thing. Like when they'll talk about like a stage performance, I know exactly what they're talking about. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. When it comes to the writing system, there, like something I did is, because Korean obviously has a completely different writing system, is like because now I have it like down so much that it's like, I never like look at a letter and go, what sound does that make, like ever. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, did I read that right? And I like re-look at it to make sure I read the right vowel or something if I was like going too fast, and then I'm like, oh, I said that wrong. But for the most part, I don't have any trouble with it anymore. And what I really did is I went, it kind of depends, but I would take, if you have a good translator, I don't know if you're just using like Google Translate or not, or what you're using, but there's one in Korean called Papago, and that's like the #1 translator for English to Korean. That's like, it's for Korean language. Is I would take a word that I saw, and so like, let's use the word school, for example. It's hakyo. And if that was the first time I'd seen it, I would sound it out, and I, like, without knowing what it meant, I'd just be like, oh, hakyo. And then I'd put it in a translator, and not to, like, learn what the word meant, but I would just listen how the audio recording of it, like, was played to make sure I was getting the general gist of it. But I completely ignored the romanized version of it, because you would, like, for example, hakyo is romanized H-A-K-K-O, H-A-K-K-Y-O.
I was at
Hakyo, Y-Y-O. Kyo. And so I like would completely avoid that, because you want to get to a point where you don't need to rely on the romanized version of anything, and you can just read it in the actual writing system and just go. But that's like how I would like check things. But I would just like read everything I could, even if I had no understanding of what it meant. I still do that, where I'll just like open a book to a random page and be like, here's a word, I'm gonna read it. Mandu, which means dumplings, by the way. But that was just the first word that
Which
came to
means
mind.
what?
Dumpling.
That's what I thought you said.
That was just the first
Wait
thing that came to my head.
Word again. Say that word again.
Mandu.
What?
Mandu.
Mandu.
Yeah. That was a nice iconic moment. Mandu. What? Mandu. What? Mandu! something that I find about Korean is that other... You okay there? You know, I first learned that word dumpling from a BTS short. It was a James Corden. It was carpool karaoke of BTS with James Corden, and they were and James Corden asked the group like who in the group are like most likely to fight, and they're like, oh yeah, Jimin and V instantly, and he was like, what did you guys fight over? And they all were like, mandu, 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 like they're like, you fought over dumplings. Anyways, that's how I learned that word. But something I'm finding with Korean is even like letters that have a specific romanized letter that it agrees with. So like the letter in Korean that looks like a square, Myeom is its name. It makes an M sound. That's the only sound it makes. M. So it's, you see the box and you're like, and that's fine. But there's like a difference in pronunciation between how you actually make the M sound versus like English, the romanized M. Yeah. And so like in Korean, any word, there's no like sharp inhale before you take it. Like if I was going to say, I don't know, money, I wouldn't just be like, money. You kind of go, money, you know? And there's like almost a slight inhale before you exhale versus like in Korean, you just like go, bandu. And because of that, M can sometimes sound really harsh in Korean, I learned, and it can almost sound like a B. So like the word for water in Korean is mul, if you're saying it really slow, M-U-L, mul. But I've heard like actual fluent Korean speakers, like that's their native tongue, they'll say it really fast and it sounds like bul. And I'm like, that sounds like you're saying B-U-L, bul. Because it's just like straight off their lips, aspirated, going off of it. And that's something I've spent so long trying to work on, and I'm still not quite doing it right, but I've definitely gotten better at it. Which is just something to pay attention to. Because they're different writing systems, so different pronunciations.
The whole pronunciation thing is throwing me. First of all, I cannot roll an R at all. My tongue moves. I can roll my tongue and do all sorts of things with it, but I cannot roll an R. I just really, really struggle with it. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to get this language to say it. But again, my main goal is to be able to read it.
Right.
Which I'm on track for that. But yeah, struggles. What is your word for the day? Dumpling? What was it?
I'll leave my word as mandu, which is dumpling. Another really cool word. Well, which one should I share? Okay, I'll share that one next week. I was going to share the one that I was intentionally going to share before I just spontaneously said dumpling on this podcast. Was Yoshin, which means goddess. And I'm actually watching a K-drama right now with my flatmate that I've just been like so obsessed with, called Yoshin Garing, which it's actually the English name for it is called True Beauty. So there is no, it's not a direct translation. But I actually don't know what the full title translates to in Korean. It's something goddess. And it's about a girl who feels really ugly and like she like got bullied for her looks and stuff, so she like learns how to do makeup really well, and then she changes schools and she like has this like beautiful face of makeup and everybody thinks she's like this goddess, but then she's like nervous that the second they find out what her face like really looks like without makeup, she's gonna like get bullied again. And it's a very sweet story about like being confident in your own skin, but I've just been watching that so much, and that's a great way to learn stuff. I'm just, it's all in Korean. And so I've just been, I'm currently, because I'm watching it through with my friend who doesn't speak Korean, we're watching it with English subtitles, but I'm going back a second time and rewatching it only in Korean subtitles. So it's in Korean with Korean subtitles as well. So at least I can read along with what they're saying and I can hear what they're pronouncing, even if I can't follow every single act of their conversation, because sometimes they speak really, really fast.
That's what I was going to ask you. Is it in Korean? Is it actually in Korean, or is it made in English?
No. All Korean actors, all Korean things. There's another K-drama that I'm watching called Run On. And I've just been kind of like watching it casually. Like every once in a while I'll watch an episode. I'm not like, oh yes, I want to sit down and watch this kind of thing. But there's it's a K-drama, so all of it's in Korean. It's Korean actors and stuff. But there's the main character, her job is a translator. So she speaks English and Korean. But she was on a set for a movie where they had an American director who was speaking English, and she had to like translate what he was saying to the Korean cast or whatever. But the guy that they cast as the American was just a Western looking guy, like a Caucasian male, who my guess is actually, you know, lived in Korea and speaks Korean, because when he spoke, it sounded like he had a Korean accent when he was speaking English. So it sounds like, you know, he's actually lived in Korea and speaks Korean, is probably, not, if not his main language, the one that he uses the most frequently now, because he had a little bit of an accent, but, you know, because he looked Caucasian and was not explicitly Korean, you know, he was like playing a Caucasian male. I just thought that was funny.
Are these K-dramas available here in America?
Yeah.
For our American listeners?
Yeah, there's a ton on Netflix. One of my favorite K-dramas of all time is called Startup. I was really obsessed with it at the end of last term, like close to Christmas, and I'm sure you heard me talking about it. I talked about it a couple times, but that is a Netflix original, so it's on Netflix if you have it. And it's like owned by Netflix, owns the rights to it completely. So yeah, you can watch that anywhere. As well as just a K-drama streaming service is called Rakuten Viki. That's what I typically watch most of my K-dramas on. And that's the same way like an anime streaming service is called Crunchyroll. That's like for anime, explicitly for anime. Rakuten Viki is specifically for Korean content and media. And you can download that anywhere. I think anywhere in the world.
Do you find it very helpful to watch shows like that?
I love watching stuff like that. I also love, just because I like K-pop, I watch a lot of like quote unquote idol shows. So like a lot of bands that are like K-pop groups will do like short shows on like YouTube and stuff, where they it's like almost like a reality show where they'll play like mini games and they'll go out and do some fun stuff, but it's like them interacting as a group. So it's a lot of that content. And specifically, I really like NCT's content because first of all, there's like 23 of them, so it never gets boring because there's 23 of them. Like, come on, there's always content coming out. But they have a lot of foreign members, so quite a few of them speak English, so there's quite a bit of English content just for my own personal enjoyment, like of members just speaking English. But because not all of them are Korean speakers like as their first tongue, I find they speak a little bit slower with each other, so it's a lot easier for me to keep pace and like understand what they were doing. Yeah. There was one game where they were playing it. It's like a Korean syllable game, because all Korean words are based off of specific syllables. And basically how the game works, explaining it in the best way I can, is somebody says a word, and then the next person, it's a rhythmic game, so you're doing it in time with each other, but somebody says a word, and then the next person takes the last syllable of that previous word and has to make a new word. But they have to be real words. And so like you're chanting and you're just like, you know, going around saying games, but it's really funny when you watch it with the captions because things don't translate one for one. So it just like, it looks like somebody's like shark, and then they'll be like, I don't know, library or something, like words that don't coincide at all, but weird. They do in Korean because, you know, they're matching syllables or whatever. I was watching a video of NCT when they were playing that, and I was cracking up, and I didn't have the subtitles on at all. I was just following along because they do it slow enough for me to follow what they're saying. Because, you know, some of the members don't, like, they have Japanese members, they've got Chinese members, members who speak English as their first language. Ten is from Thailand, so, yeah. So he speaks Thai as his first language. So they've got tons of foreign members. So I feel like they all kind of speak a little bit slower for, like, when they can't understand each other, which is really, really nice. So I've been using a lot of that as my learning sources lately.
Oh, cool. Any way you can. That's great. I might go back and watch the Americans. I was going to say the Russians. Watch the Americans again, which is a great TV series. It was on for like 6, 7, 8 years, I think. And it was based on a true story. Did you ever watch the Americans?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's based loosely based on a true story of back in the 80s during the Cold War, when Glasnost and all that was happening, and they had Russians would come, and they were trained in Russia from the age of 5, 6, like really young, to be American.
Oh.
And then as adults, they came over to America, no Russian accent. They were completely westernized, and they were meant to sort of live their life here as Russian spies, but you couldn't tell. They were the least bit Russian. They were so Americanized. And it followed this couple that was brought here to America, two spies. They were made to marry here. They had children here who were American citizens because they were born on American soil, who didn't even know their parents were Russian spies. And I know. And in the series, this couple, this family, actually lived across the street from a member of the CIA, and they got to be friends. And neither one knew the other one was. Well, the Russians knew that he was CIA, but the CIA guy didn't know that they were spies. They thought they'd go over and have barbecues, and they'd talk about things, and the spies would get information and go back, and it was a great series.
I think I've actually, now that you've described the plot, I think I've heard about that somewhere, but go back and watch it.
Yeah. Really, really good. And the fun thing is that the male lead on that is, I think his name is Matthew Rhys. He's Welsh. And if you listen to him speak ever, he's like strong Welsh accent, doing an American accent, pretending to be Russian.
Nice.
Yeah. But anyways,
blend
that's a
of
great,
stuff there.
great series. So I may go back because there's quite a bit of scenes in that where they're just speaking Russian straight away.
Yeah. I was watching, last bit on this is I watched, I think I mentioned this, I might have mentioned this in a past episode, or it might have just been on the phone with you. I can't remember if we were just casually on the phone or if we were podcasting. But I watched, for the past year, my friend has been taking me through the Marvel universe because it's been a universe I've actually never conquered because there were so many movies. I was intimidated and I was like, I don't know what order they go in. So my friend was like, oh, I'll sit you down and we'll go through movie by movie. And I just finished Endgame, so I just finished the whole cinematic universe. I'm so proud of myself.
Wow.
No spoilers. But I was watching Black Panther when we were on the Black Panther movie. And there's one scene where they go to South Korea for like there's like this heist, and they go to South Korea for this party, for this heist. But to get into the door, there was like a conversation between a Korean woman who was like kind of like the guard at the door that was like letting you people in, and the party. And they had this full conversation in Korean, and it was subtitled obviously because it was made for an American English speaking audiences, but I understood the entire thing without the captions to the point where I forgot. I didn't realize there were captions on it at first, and I actually paused the video and I was like, "Do you know what he said? Like, do you know what they said?" And my friend was like, "Yeah, there were subtitles," and I was like, "Oh, well, I understood it all, so whatever."
Brownie point. That's pretty cool when it's starting to just bleed in and you're like, that's what he's doing.
Currently, I'm trying so hard to find, like, not to say to find a native speaker where I am. That kind of sounds weird, but I really want, like, a friend or a buddy, like, that I can talk with in my target language casually, just, like, so I can practice speaking. Because currently the only native speaker I speak to is the when I do Korean tutors on Italki, which I have to pay for, which I have no problem paying a teacher, but also sometimes I just want to practice. Like hit up a friend and be like, can I buy you a drink, and like we'll go practice Korean or something, but still on the lookout for that.
So chime in.
So chime in if you want to be my Korean speaking buddy.
Nice.
Shall we move on to Two Truths and a Lie?
All right, I'm a little nervous, I have to say.
So, how this works for our lovely listeners is I was asked this past week to find, like, movies, books, artists, kind of anything, and, like, modern media and stuff, and, categorize it, and have 2 true statements and 1 lie statement, and you have to just pick out which one is a lie. You said that you didn't mind not knowing stuff, so I'm here to quiz you. So I only have 4 because they were actually really hard for me to come up with, and depending on if people like this segment, we can do it again and I'll have more time to think about new stuff. But I thought we'd start out easy and then I think start out easy.
The easy one wrong.
No, the easy one is specific to me, and then the other ones are more like media and overall world things. But the first one is countries I have pen pals in. So I'm going to give you 3 countries, and you just have to guess which one I don't actually have a pen pal in.
Okay. Which one of these is a lie?
Yeah, which one of these? So countries I have pen pals in: Australia, Singapore, and Italy.
Ooh. Singapore.
Correct. I had one.
Nice.
Past tense, I had one, but we do not pen pal anymore.
Ah, so you have an Italian pal and an Australian pal.
Yeah, I have 2 Australian pen pals and one in one in Italia, one in Italy.
Nice.
And the Italian one and I actually pen pal like really frequently. We get back to each other really frequently because a lot of places in Europe can get to, like just across Europe in general, can get back to England really quickly. So I feel like we pen pal pretty frequently. But Australia from England takes like, sometimes I don't even hear from that pen pal for like 2 months, and then I get back a letter, and then I'm like, I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Yeah, they write your answers. The answer to question number 3 is yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I have no clue what that. I was like, I don't know what I asked you.
That makes
Cool.
sense. The pen pal club I does. Oh my God, I didn't just say the pen pal club I run. Pen pals do say it takes 4 weeks to get a letter to Australia. So 4 weeks to get there and then 4 weeks to get back plus writing time. So yeah, a couple months.
Yeah. Here to the US is about 2 weeks time. Okay, the next one. British slang phrases. So they're not really phrases, they're more like slang words. So, mortal, as in not immortal, mortal, pied off, and crankin'.
Those are things that people would say.
In Britain, like they say in like casual colloquial phrases.
Give them to me again.
Mortal, pied off, and crankin'. Crankin' being like cranking, ing, but like crankin'.
I think pied off would be something I would hear there. I don't know what it would mean if you were pied off. Oh, this is hard. I know there's no money writing on it, so just pick one, right? What was the last one?
Crankin'. And the first one was mortal.
I think mortal is something that's not British.
Nope, that's real. Crankin' is the lie. Pied off and mortal are both real. I'll tell you what they mean. Pied off.
What do they mean?
That's what I just said. I'll tell you what they mean. Pied. Interrupting me
before I can explain.
Pied off means the exact same as blown off. He pied me off. He blew me off.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, I've said that to you on the phone before. Like if I like ignore somebody's text, they pied me off. That's what it means. And mortal just means drunk. So
really?
when you're really drunk, I've had so many like of my flatmates come back and like at like 2 a.m. and I'm watching a movie introverting and then like they come into the kitchen and I'm like, hey, like, are you doing okay? And they're like, oh my God, I'm so mortal right now. I actually drunk. Like I'm so drunk right now. And I remember when I first heard it, I had to ask, I was like, what does that mean? You're so mortal? And they're like, I'm so drunk. I think that one is a northern slang, like only North England.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Well, no, it mustn't be because one of my flatmates is from like Newcastle, and one of them is like all the way from like down south, by London. So, and they both knew what the phrase meant. So maybe not. Okay. You've got 2 more categories. Would you like K-pop artist stage names or overall 2020 slang words?
Oh, these are both good categories. Let's go in order, whatever the next one is.
Okay. Since we just did one slang, we'll go to K-pop artist names. So these are stage names for K-pop artists, not their real names. And you just have to guess which one is not true. We have Win Win, Jin Jin, and Gyu Gyu.
Well, I know Jin from BTS, but Jin
Not Jin, Jin Jin as a stage name, Win Win as a stage name, and Gyu Gyu.
Gyu Gyu sounds Korean, so I'm going to say that's real.
Okay.
Win-win or...
Jin. Like Jin from BTS, but take it and double it. Jin.
I'm gonna say win-win is incorrect.
No, that's a real person.
Oh.
Gyugyu I made up. Gyugyu is made up.
Sounds real.
Gyugyu I made up from Bumgyu from TXT. I just took the last part of his name and doubled it. But Win is a real person. Jin is also a real person. And like you said, Jin is a real person. And there's also a Win in a different group. They're all in different groups. So Win is from a group called MCND. Jin is from BTS. Win is from NCT. And Jin is from Astro. So now you know.
Now you know. And
but there is
will be changing her name to Joan.
And there is no Gyugyu. I actually got scared that there might have been a Gyugyu, and I just didn't know. So I actually Googled, and I was like, Gyugyu K-pop, and nothing came up. So there is no current Gyugyu artist.
So I've got 1 right and 2 wrong. Okay.
The last one is just overall teen slang in 2020.
I'm gonna choke on this one. Okay.
I think you can get this one because the two true ones of these, I've said both of these. And obviously the lie is a lie, so I haven't said it. So
now it's the pressure of if I've listened to you and paid attention. Okay, go
well,
ahead. Hit me.
I don't know if I've said them to you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Cap, retweet, and fig.
Well, I know retweet. Are you talking Twitter retweets?
I'm not saying what context it is. I'm just...
Okay.
It doesn't mean... Well, cap is a real word, too.
And what's the third one?
Fig.
Fig?
They're all real words. I'm just saying slang words, as in it has another meaning.
Fig like Cave Town's cat?
Could be.
Fig. Cap. Watch, retweet's the only one that's not. Retweet is a thing. Are you talking about slang?
Yes, I'm talking slang. Slang that you would say person to person, face to face, in a sentence.
Okay, well then I'll say retweet because that's a word, but it's not necessarily slang. It's a thing.
It is slang. It is slang. But it has fig is the lie. Retweet just means I agree, as though you would retweet it if it were a tweet on Twitter. So you could say something and I could be like, retweet. Just in real life. You would say, retweet. Yes, I agree with what you're saying. I would retweet that.
Okay.
And cap means lie. So two settings, you could be like, no cap, but blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to lie, but blah, 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 blah. Kind of thing. Or nah, he's capping. He's lying.
Where does that come from? Capping.
I don't know. That one, I say that one came, I said 2020 slang words, but I think that's been a slang word longer than 2020. It's weird. I don't really know the origin of most slang words. I just hear other people use it and then start to use it myself. I heard no cap before I heard of anybody being like, oh yeah, he's capping. But no cap is no lie. No cap, I saw this happen. So, yeah.
So 1 out of 4. I'm pretty out of touch.
No, I intentionally did hard ones. I didn't expect you to get the K-pop artist stage names. I actually thought it was funny because I just recently got into Astro, which has Jin, the member in it. And then I when I learned his name, I was like, oh, how funny. There's a Jin, a Win, and a Win-Win. And I was like, that's really funny. And so that's what inspired that section. And then we got to the true, truths, and lies. So I was kind of doing it to deceive you. Sorry.
Nice. No, that's okay. That's okay. You need to do that again. Come up with some more of those. That was really fun, actually.
And in the comments, let us know if you got them right, if you were playing along.
I thought you were going to ask me to name some countries that I've never heard of from somewhere. Never heard of that.
No, I wouldn't do that. Those were hard to come up with. The slang words was the one I was really proud of. I was like, oh yeah, slang words is a good category to do.
Yeah.
It was hard to make up lies for that, because I was I was nervous about fig, because I was fig doesn't really sound like a real slang word. I was maybe it could be short for figure of speech, so we'll go with that one. Oh no, that's a fig.
Oh yeah, see that makes sense.
That was my thinking. But It was hard to come up with the lies.
So here I am, stumped by my kid on Easter Sunday.
On Easter Sunday.
Yes.
And we still haven't actually sitting and recording this. Our first episode has not aired just yet, but it's set to air. Our very first episode will be out on April 6th, 2 days from when this is being pre-recorded. Obviously now, listening to this, it will be out. But that's very exciting. We're getting hyped up on our end, pre-recording. Our very first episode is coming out. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, on Facebook. Both of those ats are just Girls Across the Pond, to stay updated on our podcast, to get previews of our episodes before they air, to see photos of our very cute pooch Melody, all of that. You don't want to miss out on that. Make sure you're following us.
There you go. We've got some upcoming episodes that are pretty fun. Along the lines of what you did, we're going to talk about some just silly terminology that I've heard from you, and I think, where on earth did that word come from? So it kind of plays off of what you just said. I didn't know you were going to give me terminology today. We're also going to talk about some mistaken lyrics. You've heard a lot of people talk about those. Sometimes I listen to a song and I think, what on earth are they saying right there? And then you're heading down to London tomorrow.
I am. We typically actually record on Mondays, but because I'm heading down to London, we're recording a day early because I won't be able to actually sit on our normal recording day. But I am going to visit my broski, so I'm very excited. My broski.
Yeah, so safe travels to you. Enjoy the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Stay safe, wear a mask, use sanitizer.
You know I will.
6 feet, blah, 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 blah. Be safe.
I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I have not packed. Woo!
That's okay. What do you need? A couple days in London, you'll have a good time. It'd be nice just to hop a train and go to London. I want to be there again. Soon. All right, so that's all for today.
That is all for today. If you're listening on any podcast streaming service, thanks for listening. Be sure to rate us 5 stars because we're cool. I don't know. Because you liked it. Tell us what you think. And if you're watching us live on our faces on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed, have the notification bell turned on, and thanks for listening. We'll see you in our next episode. Bye!